quickly before they realise we're Thursday. Friends, reptiles, LARPers. It's been a weird few years. On August the 17th, 2020, relatively early in my YouTube career, I sat down to talk about what LARP looked like in that present moment. Normally at this point, YouTubers are like, go watch that older video, and you don't have to. It's kind of rough. I've got a lot better at making videos, believe it or not. A little over 3 years later, I went back to that video to explore what was happening, what I thought was going to happen next, what actually happened next, all hoping to answer one very important question. Where has all the LARP gone? So here's some context. I don't play a fest LARP system. I can't afford to play games internationally. My main LARP experience, the ones I like, are small player base, high-ish ticket price, high buy-in, indoor sleeping, catering, usually a full weekend, sometimes one day. Let's start with the numbers. In 2019, I played 14 games, most of which were weekend games. I think there were 3 or maybe 4 one-day events. 6 of those events were spread across 4 campaign systems, which I will refer to as R, W, F, and G. R concluded in October of 2019, which in hindsight was extremely fortuitous, but the others were ongoing. And 2 more of the events were a sort of campaign system, kinda, not really, which I will call T, but all the others were one-offs. And I was pressed to keep it down to just those. I could have gone to a bunch more. I even have about 4 in my calendar that I wanted to go to. I just couldn't justify it on top of how many other games I was playing. Between the start of January and the end of February 2020, I played 3 games, 2 one-day events, and my first international blockbuster event, which was conveniently both in the UK and super cheap by international blockbuster standards, but still the most expensive game I've ever played. March 2020, I had 2 events scheduled, both cancelled. One was a G event that did reschedule to October of 2021, and I did attend. Things genuinely looked like they were getting better at that point, but sadly was the last event for me in that system. The other was a one-off that said it was going to reschedule but never did, and eventually they refunded us all, so that's not happening, I guess. April I had nothing. May I had 3 events, a one-off that never rescheduled, an F event that did reschedule to May 2022, did not get enough players to run. Things were looking bad again at that point, and unfortunately spelled the end of the system altogether. And an event of a new to me campaign system that did reschedule and is now running again, but I've not been able to go to and is going to end soon anyway. June I had 1 event that did reschedule, but at a time I wasn't comfortable going to LARPs, so I didn't go to that. There was a T event scheduled at some point that I was booked on, but I ended up not wanting to go for a combination of event and timing and health reasons, and then it actually never happened due to lack of interest. I have not seen any further T events scheduled. Campaign System W did run again in October of 2022, and I think was my only LARP of that year, and then again in May of 2023, so far my only LARP of this year. And there's one more event next year, and then it's done. I have one one-off event still to come this year. It was so heavily oversubscribed, I got in off the waitlist. Basically, it would seem because young men is an underrepresented demographic in historically inspired political games. I am not currently aware of more than about 3 one-off games and no other one-offs I would even slightly consider going to. I am aware of 1 new campaign system that had wheels turning before 2020, but has not yet spun back up again. 1 new campaign system that ran 1 event and then really struggled with event 2. 1 new campaign system that is not even playtesting until next year, and also I'm crewing that one, so it's not really the same thing. And 1 new campaign system that... ask me about that one again in 6 months. It's pretty bleak on paper. Now, this is kind of disregarding that two kinds of games do seem to be back and doing okay. The established Fest LARPs, only the well-established big three. Two baby Fest LARP systems both died, and judging by the amount of advertising I'm seeing online, the sort of local club systems, the kind of thing that runs once a month at the local scout camp, is not very expensive or very big. Those are running, but maybe struggling for numbers. So what did I say in that 2020 video? Mostly that things were changing rapidly and that I didn't know what would happen, but that it would likely be spring of 2021 before I was LARPing again. It was actually autumn, but honestly, all things considered, that was pretty close. International events, so games where they expect attendees from at least across Europe, if not the world, seemed like they would be slow to return. Yeah, that's not a community I'm super in touch with, but it does seem like things were quiet for a while, but have been running this past year at least. Some big games that I was aware of pre-2020 are rerunning next year, so that does seem to be an area of LARP that's really recovering. A bunch of people I know have been going to their first ever international LARP this year. Mostly different LARPs, but that does seem to be a big trend. Because they're very expensive, there's never going to be loads of international LARPs, but I am seeing a lot of people I played games with here in the UK 2016 to early 2020 now deciding that they're going to do occasional international games. That honestly makes sense to me because yes, one international game is maybe as expensive all in as 4 or 5 UK-based games, but if there aren't 4 or 5 UK-based games for you to go to, even if you wanted to, scout camps. Scout camps were out of bounds in 2020. They became available to scouts long before they became available again to LARPers, but they are now available again to everyone. That, I think, has been frustrating because scout camps in general would have been ideal for when precautions were higher. Lots of outdoor space. Indoor space is usually very easy to ventilate, but they are available again now, and the uptake has been okay. So here's the thing I don't get about scout camps. There are so many scout camps, like hundreds. There's also scout buildings that are not camps. Some of them are even in city centres. And let's be clear, they're not aesthetic and they're not super comfortable, and not all of them have indoor sleeping. And I'm the first person to wave the flag of just because you can exclusive hire a site doesn't mean you should. But now that I know how many scout camps there are, I am slightly surprised at how underutilised they are by LARPers. There isn't a good central directory in the way that there are for YHAs, which I think contributes to people using the same 3 over and over. 3? John Lees Wood, Birch Hall, Silverwood, Kimber, Consort. Okay, a lot more than 3, but it's still probably less than 20. And I promise you, there are a lot more than 20. We just don't know about them. What I will say is that if you're tossing up between a scout camp with one big bunk room and a scout camp with a couple of small rooms and then just camping, believe it or not, the second one is probably the more accessible choice. Don't get me wrong, neither is amazing, but one big shared bunk room for everyone excludes a surprisingly large number of people. With site hires going through the roof, scout camps really are going to come down on the more inexpensive side, and if an outdoorsy kind of game is something you're looking to run, I really recommend A, finding your local scout troop, by which I mean the leader, not the children, B, asking them where they camp, and C, doing a speculative site visit or two. Not all of them will be suitable, but I'm certain we're missing some. Lyme's disease vaccine. I forgot we were all excited about that back in 2020. No, not yet. 2026 at the earliest. Restrictions on indoor sleeping. All restrictions on indoor sleeping have now been dropped, but people are now extremely sensitive to the fact that sharing a room with someone means marinating in their germs for 16 plus hours over the weekend. This cuts two ways. One, people are dropping out of LARPs last minute because they are sick. Any kind of sick, even mild colds sometimes. And two, some people still can't go to LARPs with indoor sleeping in case someone is ill. That was honestly a big factor for me in particularly 2021 and a lesser extent 2022. I had to do the mental maths every time of, if I get sick at this event, am I going to have to reschedule a doctor's appointment? If I get sick off this trip to the hospital, am I going to have to drop out of this LARP? That's not something I'm doing right now. Not gonna last very long, but oh well, enjoy it while you can. But I think we've all kind of realized that we can't just keep doing things while ill, because we're not that ill, and that transmitting diseases is preventable, and maybe we need to think about, I don't know, letting immunocompromised people have private sleeping rooms to themselves. Otherwise, they might not be able to come to the game. I think this is a good development, honestly, but the personal cost of that to vulnerable people, and I do mean both vulnerable in terms of if I get sick I might die, and if I get sick I will stay home and cry with loneliness as all my friends go off and have fun without me. That's a lot. Obviously, we should prioritize the might die people over the extremely depressed people, but I do absolutely recognize it sucks to be the person who will do the right thing and not potentially endanger others, but also, god damn it, going to this LARP and seeing my friends was the only thing keeping me going this whole month. This is absolutely a factor for game runners too. Can you write an event where everyone has personal plot if a third of your players may drop out last minute? How are you going to handle refunding people? Can you afford to refund people? If you can't, how are you going to handle that conversation? Some people aren't going to expect refunds, but not all LARPers are well off. Some people will need that money. That's going to be contentious and difficult, no matter what your stance is. Outdoor mass gatherings allowed from 2021. Yes, as previously stated, the established Fest LARPs are up and running. I believe they were up and running in 2021, certainly 2022. Player events are also now up and running, and honestly, they're doing great. There are loads of player events. Many of them are doing super well, and that makes complete sense. In terms of a consistent and predictable LARP experience, Fest LARP has the edge. Every Fest LARP event will be basically the same. There will be a set number of big battles, the field will be roughly the same size, a significant percentage of the people you and your character knows will be there, and player events are fundamentally just more time playing the character you already established and like. You already know and like the setting. You already know the rules. You don't need new kit. I know you all get new kit anyway, but you don't need it. The only unpredictable element really is the weather and character death, but you can opt out of character death at Fest LARPs. Back in 2020, I was like, maybe I'll go to Empire if Empire is basically the only thing running, and it is, but no, don't make me do Fest LARP. Even if it was the only thing running, which it kind of is, I'm not doing that. People always ask, so, reasons for this. 1, the expense. I don't understand why people think Fest LARP is cheap. It's half to 2/3 the price of an indoor game, and you need to buy food, which is absolutely going to be more expensive than getting it from a caterer, and you need to own a camping setup, which if you want an in-character camping setup is super expensive. Come here, look at me. I need you to understand. If I spend over £500 on a modern tent, it is either palatial in size or it weighs less than a kilogram. And either way, it's borderline indestructible, be put away wet, and goes up in minutes. Bell tents are aesthetic and slightly less stuffy in hot weather. That's it. If you're happy with that, that's completely fine. But I need you to understand you are making so many compromises for the aesthetic. And then transport gets exciting and expensive because you need to get that camping set up to site, and you need kit for any weather conditions. Don't talk to me about the Empire kit briefs. Reason number 2, the non-monetary investment. It's 4 events a year, plus player events. That's a minimum of 8 of my holiday days because I've finally hit the point I actually really need the Monday to recover. Plus I'm spending some of that time sorting my own food, something I hate doing at the best of times, let alone in a field. Plus some bright spark decided we should have an aspirational kit brief that actively encourages you to get new, better kit for every event. Don't get me started on the Empire kit briefs. And reason number 3, I just don't like that kind of game. I like very intimate, very intense, plot-driven games where I can see and interact with the levers. I like to get my heart rate up and wring the fun chemicals out of the old brain sponge. I like being super invested in a character. I like being run off my feet. And yes, I like being the center of attention occasionally. But I also hate fighting for it and would like things to just very organically give everyone their cool moments in the way that they can in smaller games. games, not always. I do not like self-starting roleplay for an entire weekend. I do not like being bored. I do not like feeling like I'm on the edge of other cool things happening that I'm not involved with and don't know how to access. And I don't like mass battles. I also can't stand being cold. I dislike not washing. Don't tell me about the showers at Empire. I've seen them. They're full of spiders. And while I like camping fine, I dislike a forced early start when I have to then make breakfast, which I just won't do, and put on elaborate kit and makeup while still sweaty, and then do a quite intellectually challenging activity. Camping is fine when I'm getting up, dragging on yesterday's clothes, inhaling tea and a pastry, and getting eyes down for 15+ miles of walking. That's a very different animal. LARPing is hard on me physically and emotionally. When I get to sleep in a bed and someone else feeds me hot food 3 times a day, I have to do all that myself. None of this, incidentally, you should take to mean that Fest LARP is bad. It's not. It's flawed, certainly, but lots and lots and lots of people really like it. Although, judging by my Facebook wall, a significant number of them could do with gently reassessing their relationship to it. I have, it turns out, very specific tastes in what I like, and I know what those things are. And I'm not going to spend finite time and money on things I only sort of like. Because of the issues with overnight sleeping, I predicted a rise in one-day events. No, that has absolutely not happened. People are not super keen to do one-day events. Of the one-day or shorter events that I've seen, some have done okay, some have struggled. Shorter events in particular have not done well if they've even managed to run. And I theorize one of the reasons is travel, with a side order of investment versus payoff. Role-playing for just 4 to 6 to even 8 hours is hard. I can just drop straight into character with enough mental preparation beforehand. I haven't always had time, and not everyone can. One-day events are surprisingly expensive because venue hire rates have gone astronomical. And then you have to factor in getting in and out of kit, and what time the event finishes, and travel is an actual nightmare. Something that has only gotten worse in the last few years. Once you start factoring in public transport in the UK, it suddenly starts looking like traveling more than about 20-25 miles at a push is totally unreasonable. If it's more than one change, it's not happening. It's so expensive and time consuming. Are you going to travel over an hour each way for a 4-hour game? Especially when delays or misconnections might turn that into 2 or 3 hours? Are you going to want to travel for over an hour after an 8-hour game that finished at 9 or 10 p.m? So you're on dodgy evening trains, and if it goes wrong, you're stuck. All things I did in the before times. Now, God, that's a lot of money and wasted time and stress and exposure to other people's germs, and your game does not actually sound that exciting. The balance of this is that I do think if you were in a sufficiently densely populated area, especially one of the cities that has a lot of LARPers, if you ran something that was specifically tailored to those LARPers, you'd probably be okay. This is not how anyone does LARP. LARP runners come up with an idea they're excited about, and then they see if anyone wants to play. Once you start filtering out the people who want to play by extreme proximity, you don't end up with viable numbers. I think there may be some mileage in the D&D approach. Get a bunch of LARPers you know and want to play together, who are in the same place, and ask them what kind of LARP they all want to play, and then write that. But no one's tested this. I could be completely wrong. Online games have died a death. Back end of 2020, it felt like everyone was running an online game. I ran an online game, arguably. We can't agree on whether it was a LARP or not. I played loads. I crewed a couple. As we've returned to in-person games, they've died off in a big way. I think there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, a lot of them weren't very good. I don't mean that the people running them, and I include myself in this, did a bad job, but we never seemed to get past the teething stage where we were figuring out what worked as an online LARP and what didn't. If an online LARP would have been better run as an in-person game, there was no reason for it to keep running online after about the middle of 2021. And a lot of online LARPs were kind of covering for the fact that they would have rather run in a physical room. A couple of LARPs did really make use of the online aspect of the game, but not many. And I'm not surprised. Meetings by video chat are hard and awkward, and LARP by video chat is way worse. Also, there's just a fundamental limit on how exciting something can be when you're sat in a computer chair at the desk you've sat at all week for 4 to 12 hours with Discord open. Yes, there were online games that ran all day. I do not think this worked well. Secondly is just that people have sort of lost interest. We miss in-person LARP. We've been missing in-person LARP for years. Are you going to devote your attention to writing and running another online game that people might not be all that excited for? Or are you going to focus on writing and running an in-person game which is inherently cooler and more impressive and slightly more likely to actually happen and gives you way more well-established options for what you can do? Thirdly, tabletop. We all figured out we could run tabletop with the LARPers we know online, and while LARP struggles when you aren't physically all in the same room, I think everyone can agree that the worst part of tabletop was having to physically go out to someone's house or a pub or something, and then back again 4 to 6 hours later. If you're already going to run an online game with your 6 friends, you can run tabletop a lot easier and more satisfyingly straight onto voice chat than you can come up with a good LARP idea and implementation. Finally, at the end of running a LARP, you get to watch all the people be happy and froth about how cool it was. At the end of an online game, you get to say thank you, say goodbye, and sign off voice chat. It's weirdly thankless in spite of the fact that it's almost as much work, honestly, to run an online game. There have been a couple of survivors in the online LARP sphere, and honestly, I'm happy for them, but it is only a couple. I do have some ideas still on the back burner that I think would actually work super well online, but the implementation is hard and I'm not wildly confident that they'd work. It's a lot of effort to put into something kind of experimental and that people don't super seem to want. In that older video, I also announced the start of the Field LARP Wardrobe project, which I am still working on. Each video is a lot of work and money, and it doesn't do very well, so I have to like sneak it in when I can. And I had a bunch of projects I wanted to work on, which I did not. Really. ADHD, man. I need deadlines or nothing happens. I also encouraged new game runners to get stuck into online LARP as a testing ground to then go on to run in-person games when they could. And okay, here's the thing. A bunch of stuff has changed. Dropouts are more likely. Venue prices have gone way up. Food prices have gone way up. But also people are just finding it much harder to find people who want to play their games. And I kind of get it because I have always had strong opinions on LARP. I will not play anything apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic. I do not super enjoy misery simulators. I want the state of things to have measurably changed either for the world or my character by the end of the game. I want to turn up and go, not have to be constantly involved in downtime roleplay or have loads to read ahead of time. I want to know, ideally in advance of booking, if the plot is everyone dies at the end. But I have also got way pickier about what I play. I'm very tired and I don't have an endless amount of disposable income, and I don't enjoy traveling, especially since I got my driver's license right before 2020 and then did not drive for 3 years. So my options are extremely stressful experience in car or extremely stressful experience on public transport. That is somehow even worse than it was in 2019. Between January 2019 and February 2020, I played 17 games and I did not enjoy all of them. Some of them were terrible or just deeply underwhelming experiences. And in hindsight, there were serious red flags that some of them were going to be terrible. And I've got a lot more sensitive to those warning signs. I'm tired of trying to have fun at games where I really dislike how the game runner handles things, or there's another player who I super don't want to interact with, or where I hate the site, or the food is bad, or I'm just not one of the cool kids. Now I'm no longer on the bandwagon of new LARP hype and new things being announced all the time, and lots of them being super cool and sounding full of potential, and we'll book and figure out the details later. I'm being much more conservative with my time and energy and money, and I don't think I'm alone. But on the other side of things, there is just less LARP happening. There's far fewer games being announced, far fewer events actually happening. The slice of LARP I enjoy the most seems to be the hardest hit, and I'm now only getting to 1 or 2 events a year, and I'm genuinely worried that by 2025, when my last surviving campaign system is done, that's gonna be none. Where's all the LARP gone? I really don't know, but I hope it comes back. Thank you for watching. I hope you've appreciated this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to keep the YouTube gods happy. Follow me on other platforms if you'd like to see pictures of my cat. And down in the description box you'll find a link to my Ko-fi. Coffee? I'm going with Ko-fi today, where you can make a one-off or reoccurring donation to support this channel and stop me getting insane cabin fever over the fact that I haven't been covered in fake blood in the woods for months. Ko-fi supporters get early access to all of my videos and the occasional extra sneak peek. And can I just say, the bang for your buck coming in just before the October extravaganza is probably going to be pretty good. Dream big, and I'll see you in October.